All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, most complicated moves in the entire M&A world, divestitures. This isn't just about selling off a piece of the business. It's a massive strategic undertaking where getting it right can completely redefine a company. But getting it wrong, well, that can be a total disaster.
And I think this quote just nails it. A divestiture really is like trying to tame an elephant. It's huge, it can be unpredictable, and you absolutely need a solid, well-thought-out plan to even stand a chance. For anyone working in M&A, getting your head around this process isn't just nice to have, it's essential.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the basics, what exactly we're talking about. Then we'll get into the why, the real strategic reasons companies do this. We'll look at the different ways you can structure a deal, and of course, the big challenges you're almost guaranteed to face. And stick around, because the most important part is the end, where we'll give you a framework to actually measure just how big your own elephant is.
Okay, first things first. Let's make sure we're all on the same page about what a divestiture really is.
So at its simplest, it's selling off a company asset. But the key here is the reason behind it. The whole idea is that the part you're selling is actually worth more on its own, or maybe under a new owner, than it is as part of your company. For us in the M&A space, this is all about unlocking that hidden value and making the entire corporate portfolio stronger.
Now, who you're selling to makes a world of difference. This is a really critical point. If your buyer is a financial player, think private equity. They need a fully functioning, standalone company from the word go. Day one, it has to run itself. But a strategic buyer, they're probably going to integrate it into their own operations eventually. So for them, a logical separation on day one might be enough. Knowing your buyer's endgame is probably the first big step in figuring out how to approach the whole deal.
So, you might be wondering, if these things are so complicated, why on earth would a company even bother? Let's dive into the core reasons.
It really boils down to four main drivers. First, a company might want to get back to basics and focus on what it does best. Second, they might need to raise some cash to pour into more promising parts of the business. Third, you might have a business unit that's just not a good fit, and selling it could unlock its true value. And finally, sometimes you just have to do it to keep the regulators happy. But in every single one of these cases, the goal is the same: strategically reshape the company to create more value in the long run.
And here's a great real-world example of that back-to-basics idea. You had a big hardware company that sold off its software divisions. Now, the software business was making money, it was perfectly fine, but it just wasn't part of the company's main strategic direction. By selling it, both the parent company and the new software business could find partners that were a better strategic fit. It was a win-win that unlocked a ton of value for everyone involved.
Okay, so we've covered the why. Let's switch gears and talk about the how. There are actually a few different ways to structure a divestiture, and each one comes with its own unique playbook.
These are the heavy hitters. You've got your standard sell-off, which is a straight sale. The big headache there is usually figuring out how to split up shared costs and assets. Then there's the spin-off, where you create a whole new public company. The challenge? Making sure it can actually survive on its own from day one. A spin merge is a bit of a hybrid. You spin off a unit and it immediately merges with another company. That adds a whole new layer of complexity, especially with IT. And finally, you have asset trades, which is basically bartering. The trick there is that you're divesting and integrating at the exact same time. It's a real balancing act.
Anyone who's been in the M&A trenches knows divestitures are just packed with potential pitfalls. So let's talk about the common things that can send this whole process off the rails.
I mean, really, why are these deals so tough? It's because you have all these different, complicated factors hitting you at once, creating this incredibly high-pressure situation for literally everyone on the team.
The challenges just come from every direction. You have the massive task of untangling systems that have been woven together for years, sometimes across dozens of countries. That day one deadline, it's not moving. You have to set up a whole new project office, a DMO, just to manage the chaos. All this while making sure the parent company doesn't fall apart and can still run its day-to-day business. And then you've got the human element, figuring out who goes and who stays. It is a lot.
And if you want to put a price tag on that complexity, just look at this. The one-time cost for just separating the IT systems, just IT, is typically more than 1% of the revenue of the business you're selling. That's a huge number, and it really drives home how much money is at stake when you're dealing with these operational hurdles.
So how do you even begin to prepare for something like this? Well, the very first step is to get a realistic sense of how complex the deal is going to be. And for that, there's an incredibly useful tool called the Divestiture Complexity Assessment Framework, or DCAF.
Think of the DCAF as your roadmap. It gives both the buyer and the seller a structured way to look at the deal and really understand what they're getting into.
By using a framework like this, you can spot the big problems before they blow up, manage your risks, and seriously increase your chances of pulling off a successful deal.
The framework is built around 8 key areas. You've got things like the dynamic between the buyer and seller, how much experience everyone has with these kinds of deals, the global footprint, the health of the company doing the selling, how tangled up the businesses are, and of course, the timeline. Each one of these gives you a different way to look at the deal and score its complexity.
Let's just zoom in on a few of the really critical ones. Buyer-seller dynamics. This forces you to think about things like culture clash. Global footprint. That's all about the nightmare of dealing with different laws and regulations in every country. Level of commingling. This is where you quantify just how messy that IT separation is going to be. And timeline. This is the reality check. Do you actually have enough time and enough people to get this done? Being brutally honest about these factors is absolutely crucial if you want to build a strategy that will actually work.
So the decaf gives you the tools to size up the elephant, to understand exactly what you're facing. But here's the final question. Is your team actually ready for the hunt? Because having the framework is one thing, but success ultimately comes down to execution. Do you have the right people with the right skills and the right plan to actually tame this beast? That's the question every single one of us has to answer before we start on this incredibly challenging but also incredibly rewarding journey.